Living on the Seacoast teaches you a few things pretty quickly. You learn to check the tides multiple times per day. You learn which coffee shops you should avoid on a Saturday morning. And right around this time of year, as we start to gear up for summer, you realize just how much sunlight actually pours into your house, which is great until it's too much sunlight. Because sure, you want those bright coastal mornings, but you probably don't want your neighbors getting a full view of your living room every time that they walk by. That's where Budget Blinds of the Seacoast comes in. They're a local team that comes straight to your home and helps you figure out what actually works for your space without you spending an entire weekend bouncing between Lowe's and confusing Google searches. Whether you're in a Portsmouth condo, a family home in Dover, or a coastal place up in Maine where the sun somehow finds every possible angle, they help you dial in the light, the privacy, and the overall feel of your home. Custom blinds, shades, and shutters, professionally installed, reasonably priced, and done right the first time. If you want your place to feel a little cooler, a little cozier, and a little more private as we prepare for another beautiful Seacoast summer full of long sunny days, check out Budget Blinds. You won't regret it. You can learn more by visiting the link in the show notes. Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a weekly podcast where we interview the people and businesses of New Hampshire and Maine. I'm Troy Farkas. I've produced some of the most popular podcasts in the world, and since moving to the Seacoast in 2023, I've fallen in love with the area and its inspiring people. And now I am on a mission to bring the Seacoast closer together, one podcast at a time. Today, we continue our month-long theme of celebrating the women who make our community as special as it is, and on this episode, I talked to Jen Millard, the CEO of a fast-growing company started 2 years ago, Mainelove. So I'm sure you know about liquid death. It's the water in aluminum cans that you often see at concerts, sports games, and grocery store shelves. Well, Mainelove is going for a similar vibe, minus the whole skull logo and death thing. Mainelove is a canned water company, and the source for their water is Sebago Lake, which is located roughly 30 minutes northwest of Portland. The water from the lake heads then not to the Mainelove factory, because there isn't one, but instead to a handful of breweries in Maine, where the manufacturing of Mainelove actually happens. More on that very important part of the story very soon. Mainelove, which offers still and flavored sparkling cans of water, hit the New Hampshire market at the end of last year. And as of last week, they're now in Greater Boston. On the Seacoast, you can find Mainelove at Lil's Cafe, Henry's Bagels, The Community Oven, TJ's, Golden Harvest, 3S Art Space, and more. But for CEO Jen Millard, Mainelove isn't just a beverage brand. It's a homecoming. A 12th generation Mainer, Jen attended Colby College in Waterville, Maine. And then she moved around the country for her high-flying business career, which took her from Silicon Valley to Chicago to Austin, Texas, and several other spots in between. Her illustrious career has included leading several companies to successful exits, an executive role at MasterCard, and a boots-on-the-ground look at Liquid Death when she worked for them in their startup days. Additionally, she's helped scale some of the biggest names in consumer packaged goods, or CPG. But prior to June 2024, there was one glaring omission from Jen's trophy case, a successful company built in Maine for Maine. Enter Mainelove, a product which I personally cannot get enough of. It's a business that I believe has massive potential not only in New England, but really all around the country. They're still in scrappy startup mode, but they are doing everything the right way, from the can art to the messaging to putting all the revenue back into the state of Maine to sponsoring the popular soccer team, the Portland Hearts of Pine, and basically everything else they're doing. And this is a conversation I was very excited to have. So from the Canopy Hotel in Portland, Jen and I discuss how she first hatched the idea for Mainelove, the rise of non-alcoholic beverages, some mind-blowing statistics about Sebago Lake, their plans for growing this business along the I-95 corridor all the way down to Florida, inside looks at the CPG industry, and all sorts of chemistry things that I don't quite understand, but maybe you smart people of the Seacoast understand more than me. Plus, Jen educates me on the hardcore lifestyle that real Mainers live, and she explains why traditional marketing doesn't quite land with Gen Z. This episode is presented by business coach Jennifer Wilder. And we begin this episode with why Jen Millard wanted to take her 30 plus years of experience back to her home state so she could build something meaningful in Maine. Here's Jen.
After college, in typical, I think, Maine fashion, in 1990, there were not a lot of jobs for women with brains specifically, whether it's aquaculture, agriculture, excavation, those were sort of the opportunities that were available to me. So I left Maine, as many Mainers do, and returned to Maine with a call back from Colby College to serve as a trustee. I was a first-gen student from Windham, Maine. And in one generation, to be asked back as a trustee is really touching. At the same time, it's a great impetus. If I'm coming home to Maine, let's do something amazing. And let's do something amazing for our state. And so really started this company with the intention of private economic development in Maine. How do we generate jobs? How do we retain jobs? And how do we get people to think about water as an asset?
Now, before we get to the water part of it, why were you so intent on creating something for Maine?
Well, obviously, I love my state, and I see a lot of young people leaving the state. I've had multiple students, ask me to set them up on interviews with different companies on the West Coast, and I really wanted to be seen as bringing a solution to what I think is a problem, which is we don't have enough data-driven jobs for young people. So how do you make a data-driven job? CPG is obviously very data-focused. It's a lot of sales materials. It's a lot of sales data. So how do you create those opportunities for young people? So I often laugh that I'm running a small business school at Mainelove. But honestly, the spirit of that actually comes through. So we do have a very young team. And I always am surrounded by interns.
When you've traveled throughout the country for your various roles through the decades, and you say that you're from Maine, you're in California, you're in Texas, you say you're from Maine, what is the reaction that you're met with?
Usually, first of all, you always get, I went to school in Boston. And actually my favorite quote and one of the foundational consumer insights, I would say for me, for the company, was I was in Austin. I'm in an elevator. There's a young lady gets on. She has a Maine t-shirt on. I had just come from Maine. I'm like, I just came from Maine. And she said, I went to school in Boston, which means she went to Harvard. If you go to Northeastern, you're going to say you went to Northeastern.
Really?
Yeah. If you went to Harvard or the trade school, that would be the other notation.
People don't say they went to Harvard because it carries an air of pretentiousness?
A little bit,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So they would say they went to school in Boston. So you know that they went to Harvard. But the quote that really was eye-opening to me and really anchored my thesis, her comment was, my best memories from college were the weekends I spent in Maine. And I was like, that's it. The aspiration of Maine, provenance, nostalgia, a working humbleness, as we say. So this brand sort of started as aggressively wholesome and radically kind.
Aggressively wholesome. I love that. All right. So for the actual behind the scenes of Mainelove, the water company, take me back to when did you first get the idea for starting a canned water company in Maine?
Well, I always knew I wanted to do a company here, to start something. And I had actually been working with a few entrepreneurs locally. And I literally walked into a brewery one day and the equipment was silent. I was expecting a little Laverne and Shirley. I'm going to date myself saying Laverne and Shirley because a lot of your listeners
TV show?
An old TV show about a bottling plant. Yeah.
Of course.
And I walked in and the equipment was not working. And I asked the brewers, I know these brewers, boys, what are we making today? Like, oh, Jen, we've already made all our beer today. All right. What are we making next? Oh, Jen, we're not making any more beer until someone asks us to make beer. I'm like, so all this equipment is just going to sit until somebody asks you to make beer? Yes. And then I walked over 40 breweries, all connected to Sebago Lake, Maine, via Portland Public Water District. And all those breweries had the same conditions, that they were struggling with diversification. So they were really...
What year is this that you're doing this?
2024.
Okay.
Yeah, early 2024. And I had started some research in 23, but was really focused on a mocktail concept. And then in that research, all mocktails start with water. So we would just start with water. So I figured I could always expand the line into mocktails. And often our flavors are considered a mocktail bridge because they formerly had alcohol in them. All we've done is really remove the alcohol and kind of jazz up the flavor a little.
Yeah. So I should say that you had experience early days with Liquid Death, another canned water company. So you had really been interested, had your eyes on the NA space for...
Yeah, I've done two other water brands, one in Colorado as well. And I'm a big believer in those experiences to really come home to Maine. That water should be regional. We should not be moving water, west from Maine. So it's really uneconomical, unaffordable to ship water outside of about 600 miles. So there's plenty of capacity on the 95 corridor. That's where we see our mission is really to bring water down the 95 corridor, just like snowbirds go every year. And where the state of Maine resonates in an aspirational way.
So you decided you wanted to start a water company. When you made that decision, what were the first steps toward making this a real thing?
I'm a big believer in just starting. So on June 4th, let's just start. So formed an LLC in Maine. Got all...
Called Mainelove.
Called Mainelove.
Okay.
Yep, Mainelove LLC.
And where does that name come from?
We own about 50 names. We kind of, didn't know what would stick. So we had actually started with like a 207 water thesis. And then recognized that, that area code play is a little outplayed. And so Mainelove was available. Easy enough.
All right. So June 4th,
just start.
File LLC, Mainelove, then what?
Then you need a can, right? So I didn't have a can. I didn't have any water. So we started the first expression of what we wanted the brand to look like. We worked with a local designer. The team at Blaze were our initial designers. And the product that you see today is, multiple iterations, but that shield of the heart and the tree is really what we believe represents, our big hearts in Maine. And then more importantly, the water is actually purified, so to speak, by the trees. And so the tree on the can is actually the most important fact, that the water that goes into our cans, that's part of the Portland Public Water District. And I should note that we actually pay for the water. So I pay the brewer. The brewer pays Portland Public Water District, their commercial mill rate. And the economics for the water stay in Maine to help support Portland Public Water District and that water system. And what a lot of people don't recognize in Maine, the water is not even filtered before it gets to your house. So it has an EPA waiver for solids. So you can look down in Sebago Lake, you can look down 50 feet. So that means by the time it gets to your home, it has not been filtered for solids. It has only been sanitized by the city. So all we do is we remove the sanitation, chloridamide, whatever the city uses, as well as the filter. I don't want anyone to ever get a floaty in a can. So we actually filter all the water as well.
Okay, and so you decided to go with canned water because you realized you wanted to partner with the breweries.
So, the thesis here is rising tides raise all ships. And so how do you get a brewer to evaluate diversifying revenue? And so in this case, we are encouraging brewers to convert their operations to become co-packs. So the important distinction would be water is actually considered food by the FDA. And so there's a bunch of different standards around hygiene predominantly. Alcohol is controlled by the ATF. They don't really care about your health. And the way beer is fermented, it's actually not as risky as water is. So really working with brewers on the chemical engineering was really the first. You were saying, what's the early iteration? Well, I got to figure out how to make the water. I got to figure out the carbonation. I need to figure out the can. I need to figure out the regulatory conditions. And that took about a year. So we actually moved our first can to market in December of 24.
Wow. 6 months after you filed for the LLC. That feels fast.
It is in consumer goods.
Yeah.
You want to take ownership of your marks in market. So I'm thrilled that I am fully trademarked. All marks on the can are trademarked. So it was an intentional first sale to show that I had use of marks in the end of 2024. with the first sale going to Colby. So I'm very, very happy about that. And then from there, we moved to we actually started with about 20 accounts here locally. So we still have those initial connections. That's my connection to customers, to buyers, to chefs. And so those original 20 doors are really, really special to us. And then I'm grateful to the Pine State beverage team for picking us up in May of last year for an early summer expression in May.
Okay. So many things I want to ask you about. Let's talk about Sebago Lake, because when I first met with you and Jeannie, who runs marketing for you guys, also you've done an incredible job with your hires. Everyone I've talked to at Mainelove, amazing. And I know you're very proud of that.
I am very proud of the team that we've put together. Yeah,
it's really impressive. You've got an all-star cast. Sebago Lake, the thing that shocked me was just how clean this water is. And I've told other people about Mainelove and that you get your water from Sebago Lake and they're like, it's a lake. Like, it can't be that clean. And
it's pristine, actually.
Yeah.
It's considered one of the top 5 water sources. 2 of them are in Alaska. Yeah. 2 of them are in upstate New York. And we are fortunate enough to have 2 large bodies of water here that are considered of equal stature. Sebago Lake is 2 out of 5 Mainers drinking water. So you have to recognize that I am putting drinking water in a can, but that is actually the point. Our drinking water is so pristine that we should be so proud. And we have so much to share. So an annual usage off of Sebago Lake is about 10 inches. It's not a lot. So there's plenty of room here.
For the entire state of Maine drinking water, it just takes 10 inches off the top of the lake.
Correct. This is in, multiple miles wide and 300 feet deep. So it actually contains 100 gallons per person in the globe. Think about that. For the globe.
Repeat that.
100 gallons per person globally if it stops raining today.
Wow.
So this is considered an infinite source as long as it rains. And the water actually comes from the Bethel Crooked River area down through the forest. Takes about 10 years to actually make its way all the way down to the lake. And so I often get the question of, does the PWD have any issues with you being a water brand? No, they love it. They love that we talk about it, that we're educating people. And I think it's hopefully bringing a trust factor to the water. Because in other states, I've lived in areas of water scarcity, areas of poor water quality. And when I first started the company, the first question I would get was, Jen, if you want water, just go get some at the faucet. That's the point, actually. I could not do that in Austin. I could not do that in Northern California. I could not do that in New Mexico. I could not do that in New York. And so I was like, that's actually the point, is that I can get water from the faucet. There's a lot of places in the United States that have lost trust in their tap water for a variety of reasons. There's also no state in the nation that guarantees a right to drinking water.
What do you mean?
There's no state in the nation that has a guarantee of drinking water. No rules, no laws.
Huh. Now that feels like a misstep and another rabbit hole we could certainly go down. But moving on, clearly I'm not an environmentalist, not a scientist. When we talk about the water being as clean as it is, what exactly does that mean?
It really means that, it's not really contaminated with what they call coliforms or living bio pieces. It doesn't have a sediment. So because the lake sits on, I've been educated, because the lake sits on a giant granite mountain kind of between. So it sits on a granite rock. So the lake is really pure because, and you can see about 50 feet down in the lake, just straight down, is really because of the trees that have cleaned out all the sediment by the time it gets to the lake.
In the very early days, in those 6 months between forming the LLC and having the first can hit the market, what were the hardest parts, the most unexpected challenges?
Believe it or not, color theory on aluminum is actually the hardest. So at a certain point in that summer, my husband was sort of like, there's cans everywhere on tables, on ledges, window ledges.
Classic founder story.
like multiple bins of cans, right? Cans. And we were constantly sort of running sample cans. And so we started with a digitally printed can because I was waiting on trademark. So a digital print, actually tattoos the can. Once your artwork stops moving, you can move it to a plate, what they call a plate print, sort of like a Budweiser can would be produced. And, but the ability to do a digital manifestation allowed us to move much faster. But really, I would say the biggest lesson was just because it looks blue to you doesn't mean it looks blue to me. And finding the right gradients on aluminum, because we really wanted, people always comment on how vibrant our SKUs are. We really created those for fluorescent lighting. Right? Where is your product going to be merchandised? It's going to be merchandised in a case or in a bar under horrible fluorescent lighting. So you really need to, in order to differentiate yourself, we took a little more of an elegance to that profile so that it would stand out.
Gosh, so many things that go into building a brand like this that you never would have expected.
Yeah. Lots of learning here. Yeah. I was not a chemistry major. Right. I know enough about water now to be dangerous. But the other big learning was you could talk to 3 chemists. You could get 3 independent answers and they might all be right. So how do you have an opinion on water chemistry when all 3 of those choices might be correct? Like in terms of water treatment. And so I had to add a PhD chemist to our advisory board because you have to have an opinion. And I'm not able to have an opinion. So in those early days, really working through testing, sanitation, chemical engineering. Today, I would say, I'm thrilled to say we have isolated water lines in multiple brewers. And so that means we're not hose switching anymore. We don't have as much risk of yeast contamination, which is the biggest risk. And I'd say we've always over-tested. So sadly, Maine only has 1 FDA-rated lab. And you would arrive there occasionally and it would say closed on Tuesday. So you only have a certain amount of time to test flat water after the batch has been done. So we had to actually find a commercial lab in New Jersey for brewers to ship their samples down. And that took a few months. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I couldn't believe we only had 1 lab in Maine. Yeah. And I went to all the labs. I drove to all the labs. And only in Maine can you do that. And sure enough, there's only 1.
Wow. When you started telling people in your life, your loved ones, your past coworkers that you were starting a canned water company in Maine, what was the reaction you were getting?
Well, I have had a beautiful career in financial services, predominantly in technology. All those friends think that I'm insane because I should be building some beautiful AI company. I always say this is the anti-AI investment. This is water in a can. It doesn't get more basic than that. And I've actually had investors say, oh, Jen, I only have an AI thesis. I can't invest in you. You're right. If that's your thesis, this isn't going to work for you. But if you want to diversify your portfolio, this might be a good alternative. Mm-hmm. This is my 5th company.
That you've started.
That I've been a founder of. Okay. I'm not a big believer in solopreneurs, actually. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of a lesson well learned, I would say, from my past. So I have always been really fortunate to work with amazing, broad, and big thinkers. And in the first year, my constant answer was think bigger on everything. Think bigger. So we manifested to do custom cans for hospitality. That wasn't in roadmap at the time. The sweater that I'm wearing right now with a license of the Mainelove mark. Yeah.
For example, like the cans that we have in front of us, we're at the Canopy Hotel in Portland. They're branded Mainelove can with Canopy on the side, and it looks really cool. Really sleek.
Yeah, it's been a great product for us and for hospitality, weddings, those types of venues, even regular events. That hospitality will end up, I think, being a dominant channel for us. And then we do have plans to get to Florida by September. Right. So a great summer of Maine and in New England, summer of love, so to speak. Yeah. In Maine, New Hampshire, and Mass. And then September timeframe, we will shift our mindset a little bit to our friends down in Fort Lauderdale and kind of start in that Fort Lauderdale market.
Yeah. We'll talk about the expansion in a moment. But you said that you had been challenged to think bigger. What are some other examples of situations where you weren't just thinking big enough?
Oh, I always think big enough, Troy.
Okay.
I think my team would say, Jen thinks so big, it's outrageous.
Jen, stop thinking so big.
Stop thinking so big. Jen, that's really big. You need to, bring that in. And actually for our holiday party as a sidebar, we did gingerbread house making, and our head of sales, John Violet, was like, well, Jen's not very good at making one, but if you asked her to make 10,000, she could do it. He's not wrong. So I think I come from an abundant mindset, having built companies in the Valley in California, where you have to believe you're creating a product that doesn't exist to anyone, right? In fact, a new way to bank, a new way to move money. Think of like when Venmo started. That was sort of my era. So if you remove the constraints, how big can you think? And that's really what I try to encourage my team to do. And then I'm a big believer in great agency, right? I have a wonderful team. They're incredible. Do we know everything about water? No. But I think we're very quick learners. We're also very fast to fail. So if you're going to fail, stub your toe, pick yourself back up. Let's get back at it. Make another decision.
Absolutely. From the other 4 companies that you were a big part of the early days, what were some of the perhaps biggest mistakes that you made in that time that you did not want to carry with you into starting Mainelove?
Oh, it's such a different world in a consumer brand than a banking brand, I would say. I think the difference between software and a physical good is that the storytelling needs to be so authentic. And I think this is an authentic story from Maine. It's water purely from Maine. So we've also tried to recognize that people don't want to be marketed to right now. They want what's in the can. I want to understand I want clean labels. I want it to not be overly marketed. And I want to understand what's in it.
Why do you say that? People don't want to be marketed to?
Oh, I think Gen Z has spoken that they are not looking for fluff marketing. They're looking for direct education around and very conscious around the brands, how they spend their money, what they spend their money on, the types of companies they support with their money. And so I think it's a totally different mindset in that Gen Z generation. Not only are they more health conscious, more longevity focused, they also have been concerned with hydrating since they were in elementary school. When I was growing up, nobody was worried about my hydration in Maine. Yeah. I wasn't carrying a giant Stanley cup wherever I go. And I see this on college campuses everywhere, right? So I find it's just sort of has emerged over the last 10, 20 years that, I must have a bottle of water with me all the time. Mm-hmm. So people tell us, we make a 16-ounce can. We also make a couple models in 12s, but the 16 is really that tall boy from every brewer.
Right.
Every brewer makes that size. So I often get asked, Jen, can you make a smaller can? Only if the brewer's line is able to support a smaller can. Mm-hmm. So really trying to enable the equipment they have today so that it's true revenue diversification. This is in no means a savior to the beer industry. I think we all see, Jim Beam closed their factory, laid off 400 people. They say they have over 1 year's worth of capacity in storage. That likely means 4 or 5 years because they didn't cut back, production for the last couple of years. I was just out west in California. Wineries are loaded with wine because no one's going to dinner and ordering a $100 bottle of wine. So I think our social engagements have changed in that generation around how you celebrate as well, occasions, which they might have an alcoholic beverage, but they're very focused on the occasion, on the moment.
Coming up, the kind of marketing Gen Z actually wants. Mainelove's plans to launch in Florida. Plus, I learn more about some weird traditions that Mainers have. All that in a moment, but while we're talking about love, I want to tell you about a person on the Seacoast whom I love, and that's Jennifer Wilder. You know Jen. She was the most popular podcast guest of 2025, and she's the founder and CEO behind multiple 7-figure hospitality brands right here on the Seacoast, namely Laney & Lou and Ginger Fox. These are real businesses with real teams, real payroll, and all the complexities that come with scaling something that matters. With over a decade of experience as an entrepreneur, plus 20 years in corporate manufacturing, Jen knows a thing or two about how to build and scale successful businesses, and she wants to help the women of the Seacoast chase their dreams too. Jen works with visionary founders whose businesses are growing, revenue's up, opportunities are coming in, but the systems, profitability, team structure, or even their own mental bandwidth hasn't quite caught up yet. When you work one-on-one with Jen, you're not just talking about spreadsheets and strategy. You're working on the leader behind the business too. Because if you're not showing up as the best you, the business will feel it, and we cannot let that happen. Jen's sessions aren't surface level. The conversations are intimate. The dirty details get discussed. And when you leave these sessions, you'll leave not only with better systems and plans for bigger margins, but you'll feel a ginormous weight lifted off your shoulders. So, if what I'm describing resonates with you as much as a Lainey and Lou Iron Woman smoothie resonates with me, we've got an offer for you. When you visit thejenniferwilder.com/Seacoast Stories, you, the badass businesswoman listening to this, can get $100 off the one-on-one business coaching program that may just change your business and your life. Again, that's thejenniferwilder.com/Seacoast Stories for $100 off. If you've spent any time in Portsmouth, you probably already know about Oomph Salon. They've been holding it down in the West End for over a decade, and at this point, they're basically part of the neighborhood fabric. Oomph built their reputation the right way. Incredible hair, a strong team culture, and an experience that feels elevated without ever feeling intimidating. You walk in, you get taken care of, and you walk out looking like you planned your glow up weeks in advance. They specialize in custom color, lived-in blonding, precision cuts, extensions, curl services, basically everything that you would want dialed in before a big Portsmouth night out that should most certainly end with you singing karaoke at D Street Tavern, which I may or may not have done twice over the weekend. And here's something wild. Oomph is actually the highest rated salon in all of New England on Google. That doesn't happen by accident. That comes from years of consistency, trust, and clients who keep coming back because they know they're in good hands. The team at Oomph is stacked with career-driven stylists who are constantly learning, refining their craft, and staying on top of trends. And you can feel that energy the second you walk through their doors. Quick pro tip, they offer $45 happy hour haircuts Tuesday through Thursday from 2 to 5 p.m., but it's for same-day calls only. So if your schedule is flexible and you want top-tier work at a ridiculously good Seacoast price, that's the move. To learn more or to book your next appointment, head to oomph.salon. You mentioned Gen Z, and you mentioned that the very first thing that you really did with Mainelove was you had to get the can design locked in. And I imagine what's driving that thinking is as drinking alcohol is on the decline, people are still having fun. People are still going out and having fun, and they want to look like they're having a good time holding a cool can as opposed to just like a bottle of water.
Yeah, they want to be, they feel included. I would say the biggest feedback I get is, and it's also beautiful to see, at the end of the evening, most people are holding a beer and a water. And so you look out across the bar, or you look out at whatever venue you're at, and you see a sea of blue cans. It's amazing to see. And it actually, the first time was at Wavy Days last summer. We did a June activation for Wavy Days at Thompson Point. It's an event by Mass Landing. It's a beer event. We gave away a lot of water there and by the end of the event, everyone was holding a water and a beer. It was incredible.
Nice. We support double fisting on this
podcast.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you sold your first water in December of 24. Take me into the next phase of like, all right, like we've got our product down now. How do we get this out there?
So we also started social media in parallel to the brand launch because big believer in sowing the seeds. Interestingly enough, we actually have more followers from outside of Maine than we do inside of Maine.
Why do you think that is?
Everybody loves love and harmony from Maine.
And but not Mainers themselves, apparently.
No, you have to remember, with great respect that this is tap water, right? Great tap water. And so we would always recommend tap first in any community, but where you might be out and about, we consider our brand to be supporting very active lifestyle. So active relaxing, if you think of it that way. No one in Maine, we do sit on our porches, but we're canoeing, we're hiking, it tends to be a more active engagement. And so we also try to support lots of those. We do a cyclist race for the Carabasset race. We do a sailing event. We have a golf tour. We work with the Hearts of Pine. We'll work with a soccer team down in Fort Lauderdale, and typically only work with those entities that have a component of youth sports. A lot of water companies pay a lot of money to be poured at events and stadiums. I try to make sure where I have to sort of pay to play that my company's inflection point is really into their youth foundation. And so we find, that's where the families are. That's where the moms are. The mom is still driving a significant spend of their family's budget. And then I think more and more people are thinking of water as a soda alternative, right? So you have this whole healthy soda moment or better for you soda moment. I would say water is best for you.
Amen. All right. So that's a good window into the strategy. Now, you mentioned Florida. When you first told me that you guys were really focusing on getting to Florida, I was like, that makes no sense. I mean, we're in New England. Why are we going to Florida? But the way that you put it blew my mind. Can you explain why you were interested in getting Mainelove in Florida?
Well, it's actually not optional because the winter has been a very, I would say, I knew seasonality would be a big factor because this is truly made for people from away to come to Maine, or people from away want an aspiration of Maine.
That's a thing, right? People who are from Maine refer to anyone anywhere that's not Maine as away.
Away or Flatlander.
Flatlander.
That's an old one. Yeah. I heard it the other day.
Outside of Maine,
anyone
is
who's
a
not born,
Flatlander?
not only out, but you are not from here if you're not multi-generational here. I think someone told me once you had to have 6 generations to be considered a Mainer.
Oh my gosh.
My family is
you Mainers are so stuck in your ways. I mean, we had recently I talked to someone who's a Mainer as well. She hosts a local Maine Life Media, Maine Arano Valley. She was talking to someone and who's a Mainer, and someone said, "Oh, Kittery's not real Maine." Like,
actually, a lot of people would say that. Yeah.
Why? How's that possible? Kittery, Maine, first town in Maine.
First town in Maine, but Massachusetts gets closer every day. As you cross over that bridge that says "Welcome to Maine,"
I love Kittery.
It's a beautiful spot, but, a lot of people during COVID, I would say, and I think we just got 1.4 million people in Maine.
Wow.
Which is about 200,000 more than I thought.
That's crazy.
In like the last 4 or 5 years.
That's crazy for how big a state it is, how little the population is.
I describe it as coming home. It's one small town in one big state.
Love that. All right. So Florida.
Yeah.
So,
obviously lessons learned. And like I said, fail fast, learn fast. If I had had my way, we would already be in Florida, but not all timelines work on Jen Millard's timeline. It takes a distribution strategy to enter a market and some legwork to make sure you have retailers lined up for the distributor and sort of a pre-game kind of operation. We were not capable of doing that at the time. I didn't even have my Florida license yet. So I would say January, February, March this year have been really challenging on a revenue basis just because of seasonality. It's cold in Maine. People are drinking tea or coffee or Allen's coffee brandy, which is a very Maine.
Never heard of that.
Oh, there's a lot of...
I'm from away, clearly.
There's a lot of Maine jokes about Allen's coffee brandy. You'll see it in ice fishing, and you got to look up online. There would be some adorable skits.
I have so much more Maine to explore because I've really only hung out in Kittery, New York.
Oh my goodness! Well, next winter we'll have to go out to pond hockey. We're probably going to do a pond hockey.
Fishing?
Yeah,
all right,
ice
I'll
fishing.
Come with my coffee brandy.
Absolutely. So the strategy is to get to a warmer climate is really to offset the seasonality of Maine. We sell way more water if it's hot and sunny.
Yeah.
Just human nature. And then, we're in about 600 stores by now. We'll be pushing 1,000 stores probably by the start of the summer. That's really activating the Cape, activating some parts of Massachusetts that are similar to Maine that they're closed. Martha's Vineyard is closed. The Cape is closed. Maine, essentially, snuggle up by your fireplace, right? So just kind of found our case velocity is much lower in the winter, to be expected. But I'd say the seasonality feels more like a restaurant because, and I think that's been my biggest learning right now is it feels like a restaurant's seasonality. So all the Portland restaurants that make it through the winter feel like I feel right now. And a lot of Mainers actually spend time in Florida. So it is truly a snowbird nation. In Florida, there's 5 or 6 watch parties for the Hearts of Pine. There's all kinds of Maine groups that, small communities of Mainers that go to Florida during the winter. And so our intention is to just that 95 corridor here. We'll start in Florida and then come back up to DC.
Right. There's a real affinity for Maine in the state of Florida.
There's a great affinity for Maine in the state of Florida. We are also the only water that is so proud of where it's from. We put the source on the front of the can.
Yeah. Did you say it got like 1 day to get approved in Florida just because how not clean their drinking water
Well, they
is?
struggle, right? Because Florida is at sea level. And so a lot of their water table is actually brack water, salt, fresh water. And so they really struggle to provide enough water for the amount of visitors they get. And you also have to think of the amount of tourism, which is also bringing people not from Florida, but all the cruises that leave, all the hotels, all the timeshares, all the golf courses. Those were all moments where people need to be hydrated. And we sit at a time, we haven't talked really about aluminum, but we sit at a time where I think people are very conscious about removing single-use plastic. Now, that might be because their shareholders are pushing them to do it. It might be via local jurisdiction. There's a lot of communities in and around Boston, for example, that actually restrict single-use plastic. And so there's not a lot of alternatives. So the other reason for the can is really to help retailers define a water category in aluminum. Because if Liquid Death is sitting there by itself, it's going to be all over the place. Every store, it's going to be merchandised slightly different. So our best position is to help a retailer make an aluminum category. A skull is not appropriate for every occasion.
Right.
That's a rebel at any age, right? And they do a great job. Anyone can be a rebel. You can be 85, you can be 3, you can be pregnant. Doesn't matter. You're a rebel by holding the can. This is Love and Harmony from Maine. So in those moments where that rebel persona isn't the right persona for you, I hope that Love and Harmony is.
Is any part of the strategy and the branding and the messaging coming from Mainelove a direct shot at Liquid Death? Because if you see them side by side, like most people would be like, oh, I want love. I don't want skulls.
I hope so. Yeah. But they're about to go public for over $1 billion. Yeah. So they've built an amazing business.
Well, they're also a lot farther along,
they are, and they've raised a lot more money. But we would consider ourselves a frenemy to Liquid Death because of the aluminum category.
Right.
They took a very big leap to make a statement, over 5 years ago. And so this is a way to support as consumers really move away from plastic and as entities are being forced to have alternatives to plastic, offering more of a solution. And Mainers are very practical.
Yes, of course.
So we don't, everyone, the BPA conversation, the PFAS, those are all serious matters. We leave those to experts. We focus on providing a humble solution in a sea of plastic.
You said 600 stores you can find Mainelove in. How do you get a can in a store? Just take me into the behind the scenes there.
We typically work with a variety of distributors in each market. Water can literally ride with alcohol. It is not as restricted as beer or anything else. So we typically work with a food service provider like a Native Maine here in Maine or US Foods. And then we also work with distributors like Pine State, NH distributors down in Boston, the Sheehan's. So really put together a distribution strategy of how you're going to enter a market. And then it's easier if we bring a couple retail chains with us because it's hard to say no.
The flavors, my favorite is blueberry lemon, but there's also raspberry lime,
blackberry grapefruit,
and then you've got your still and your bubbly as well. Those are some interesting flavor combinations. How did you land upon those?
Well, we tried to do an indigenous first berry. But in order to do no sugar, you have to cut them with some sort of citrus. And so specifically the blueberry is very medicinal if it gets to be too blueberry without a sugar. And so really the adding of the citrus actually balances out the palate profile. So that's why they're all bookended with a citrus. That's likely to continue. I'm not afraid of doing a beverage with sugar, but it would likely be cane sugar, something that's very identifiable on the label. You know, if you do an iced tea, you're going to need to put some sugar in it. What type of sugar is really the question.
You launched in New Hampshire at the end of 2025. What's kind of your New Hampshire strategy? I live in Portsmouth, so I'm very interested in what's
well,
going
obviously
on there.
The Seacoast is important to us
Damn
because
right.
the tourist that goes to the Seacoast is probably coming up to Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in Portsmouth in my early career. Yeah.
What years?
I'm going to date myself, but it would have been 92, 93 probably.
Okay. And vastly different than it is today.
I was the store manager of the Sears store at the Fox Run Mall.
Wow, no way.
It was my first real job out
Did you hear what
after
happened
college.
to the Fox Run Mall?
I have.
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Yeah. Not the only mall to R.I.P. I mean, but yeah, stretch. I mean, I had 300 people that worked at that store.
What were you getting up to in the 90s in Portsmouth? What were the things to do?
Well, interesting for what you do. You know, I was single and living, you know, by myself in Portsmouth. And so similar to the dinners that you run, you know, finding your tribe was a little bit challenging. And then I got moved around at Sears quite a bit. So I actually left and went to Detroit for 5 years.
Okay.
So wasn't there. I was only there a couple of years.
But any favorite restaurants, hangouts? Oh,
I love the ferry restaurant. Yeah, Old Ferry Landing. Yeah. And how do you not love fried seafood, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful spot.
Yeah. All right. So in New Hampshire, your goal is just you want to get into coffee shops, into grocery stores.
The same as any other state, I would say. New Hampshire's a little challenging because there's really only 2 distributors in the entire state.
Really?
And so you get what you get and you like it. There are not a lot of choices. So we really work hard to be a great partner. Because distributors have to love the product because they're ultimately the ones that are pushing the product. So in New Hampshire, predominantly in the winter, it's been ski resorts, private colleges, private high schools. We do custom water for colleges and custom water for private schools as well. So, and then we are in all the Hannafords in Maine and New Hampshire. That chain has been wonderfully supportive. And I shouldn't say all. We are in select doors for Hannaford, predominantly along the coast, but have chain authorization to actually go to New Hampshire. So that means I have the ability to sell in. I have permission to sell into those stores.
You're in Lil's, for example. We love Lil's in Kittery.
It's amazing.
Is it just as simple as you can just drop your water off and say, hey, here's 100 waters? Or you go through a bazillion other people to make that happen? So
I made a very early decision that we were not going to own any equipment, right? I'm using the idle equipment that's already in a brewery. I own a pallet jack. Our truck is leased. Our warehouse is leased. So really have worked hard to do an asset light model here so that all the cash flow that's generated can be used for sales and marketing, actually. So by starting with that model, it forces us. I decided early on that I did not want to self-distribute. I do not want to manage trucks. I do not want to manage drivers. And why would you set up why would you set a conflicting, why would you do that yourself if you're doing water? This is a commodity product. Anyone can sell it and anyone can carry it. So working through the distribution networks takes a little extra time. I would say on the front end, takes a lot of strategy, a lot of relationship building. But in the end, you end up with, 100 trucks in Maine every day going to every store. And then what we found to reach that coffee shop is really you need a food service provider like a Native Maine that is going to a restaurant like a small coffee shop that makes its own bagels or makes its own breakfast pastries. Distributors won't really visit those locations unless they take over 5 cases. So anything that's 4 cases or below would traditionally probably go to food service.
So you guys, as we are speaking right now, just recently launched in Boston, and
as we speak,
that's congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a big deal. What really, you are in the thick of it, building it right now. You're at the kind of this critical do or die stage for a lot of early stage companies.
Oh, it's do or die. Yeah. That's true. 100%. Yeah.
As you look out at the rest of 2026, what are the big hurdles that you're trying to clear to make Mainelove stick around for the long haul?
Cash is king. I mean, in a CPG business with ever-evolving aluminum costs and sort of the world's, this is not a great time to start a company, to be honest. However, cash is king. I think we've done a really good job of positioning ourselves for success, but I need to sell a lot of water. And so really opening up Massachusetts, just pushing out to those distributors actually in the next week, likely. We've already started with some, but specifically like some of the Cape will start opening. The Maine seasonal doors will start opening. So we'll see a little surge to get into those doors. But the biggest challenge for us this year is case velocity and repeat purchases. So you love the blueberry. Case velocity,
that's a term I've never heard before.
How many cases? How many cases do you sell? And what is your pull? Meaning it's great if you buy it one time, but that doesn't mean that I've won your heart, right? It's fantastic if you buy it 2 times. It's great if you buy it 3 times. And then if you're on a subscription, which we do offer a water subscription on the website to the states where we're authorized, that's what I would say the most devoted customer. And so really getting people to buy it more than once is really our goal for the summer, which is repeat purchases.
On your website, the water is a higher price point. So what would you say to people who, are like, man, like your water's really good, but I can also buy other water that's maybe not as high quality, but it will really save me some money, especially if I'm buying case after case?
Yeah, I think we've tried, can't come home after being away from Maine to tell people what to do. So I think of us as offering an alternative. This is a premium product made by premium people with premium ingredients. It will never be a water that can compete on price. It is a water that should compete on value and quality. So I think that warrants a higher price point. I also want to ensure that I can continue to pay brewers a sort of a boat price, right? A co-op, like a lobster co-op price for the water. All my friends in California would say, Jen, you should have them dynamic price the water. Tell them that they need to bid on the water. I'm like, you're right. That could be done here. This could be a dynamic pricing model. But I really am focused on a rising tides, raise all ship, Hal Varian's economic theory. And I think we're showing that we're doing it together. And it's a wonderful feeling to be home and to be working with brewers.
Heck yeah. Jen Millard, everybody, of Mainelove Water. Wow, you are a treasure trove of information. You've really become a chemist. So I
honestly, I'm a fast learner, but I have a lot of learning to go. A lot of learning to go.
Well, I can't wait to check in with you perhaps a year from today. I mean, even if you remember who I am, you'll probably have eight minutes of time because you'll just be, walking red carpets. Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate
You're welcome, Troy. Great to be here.
That's Jen Millard, the CEO and co-founder of Mainelove. To learn more about the company or to order cases of water directly to your home, just visit their website, mainelove.com. As for us, our next 2 Seacoast Stories dinner clubs are coming up. On Friday, April 3rd, we're hitting downtown Amesbury for the first time. Then 2 weeks later, on April 15th, we make our Manchester debut. We'd love to see you at either or both of these events. To join us, you can book your seat by visiting the link in the show notes. I'll be back very soon with another conversation featuring another amazing Seacoast businesswoman. But for now, thank you, Jennifer Wilder, Oomph Salon, and Budget Blinds for supporting the show. And thanks to all of you for listening. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. But until then, live free or die.